Hello, hello. Welcome to our Facebook Live weekly event. My name is Karen Barbito, and I'm the Director of Programming for Support After Abortion, and we are so glad that you are here today. Can you believe that we've been doing this for almost 5 months now? I certainly can't. So today, I just want you to take a moment right now to share this live feed with everybody in your Facebook friends. Like us on Facebook. We want to get this message out to as many people as possible. And you definitely want to do it for this shows today, because we are going to be talking specifically about men and abortion. Sometimes they're left out of the conversation, and they really need to be drawn into it, because men are impacted just like women are when a pregnancy is terminated. So share this feed with your Facebook friends and like us on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter and our social media platforms. And I do want to remind you that we have a conference on October 28th through 30th, and it's free. So you can register at Support After Abortion Virtual Conference. It's free, 3 days, 9 to 5, jam-packed content. And the guest that we have on today is going to be part of that conference. So won't you help me in welcoming Dr. Joseph Roebuck. He's a PhD and MD. He volunteers for the Catholic Charities of the Diocese of St. Petersburg, Florida, in their ministry called Foundations of Life. Won't you please help me in welcoming Joseph? Hey, Joseph, how you doing?
Oh, great. Thank you very much for having me, Karen.
Well, I am so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that we're just starting this conversation, or like expanding on the conversation of men and abortion. I know that that's your passion, but let's go back and start at the beginning as to why you're really involved in this movement. Do you mind sharing some of your story with us and for those that are watching?
No, this is a great opportunity. Thank you. You know, nobody enters into a relationship with the plan of having an abortion. No pregnancy that's unplanned is ever well thought out. Okay. And I was in college. I was actually in graduate school. I had been in a stable relationship for 3 years with a girl I really liked. You know, we hadn't discussed marriage or anything like that up to that point. I think I was really absorbed with my graduate program, and she was in school, and we were just moseying along. And one day she came up to me and she told me she was pregnant, and I was shocked. I kind of like sat there like, you know, deer with the lights on, you know, the headlights in his eyes. And I think I did the standard, well, we'll just have to get married. And she was opposed to that idea. It was, you know, in retrospect, it was probably the wrong answer. And she ended up deciding that it was the right thing for her to do. And at the time, I didn't know it. I was totally in a daze. I didn't stop to talk to family about it. I didn't, you know, think that it was a good idea to get others involved. She was against anyone else getting involved, and I kind of went along. And in retrospect, I think some of it was just my own selfish needs. I was in graduate school. I wasn't ready to be a father. So as it turned out, she had an abortion. I had a crisis of conscience. I couldn't pay for the abortion. I couldn't take her to the abortion. I was there at the hotel room where she was going to be for a couple days while she told her grandmother that she was on vacation. Okay. And I remember standing at the hotel room door and feeling very sheepish, like, now what do I do? Okay. We stayed in relationship for another 2 years after that. And then I think the best way to put it is the relationship ended abruptly.
That's really common, Doctor. That's really common, Joseph. We hear that all the time. What's not common that I heard in your story, and I find it really compelling, is that you named it, you had a crisis of conscience. So you wanted to support her, didn't really know what to do. You kind of like, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but we hear so often that it's just so unexpected that it's kind of hard to see the forest through the trees, right? Because you just had the problem that you're trying to deal with, and so kind of went along with it. But at the 11th hour, you had that crisis of consciousness. That is not common. So I just want the audience that is listening to hear that.
Yeah, and you know, as I've reflected on it over the years, and we talk about different ways people, you know, you can compare people who are seeking support after abortion, you know, be it PTSD. In some ways, I think like I felt like an imposter, like this couldn't be happening to me. I mean, you know, we were using birth control. You know, we had never had this problem before. How do I reconcile these events in real time with the right way to go? Okay. And then part of me felt like, I mean, I was sort of hostage to the situation. If I wanted to respect her wishes, then I was silent. I didn't talk to anybody. But I mean, I had older brothers who had experience with unplanned pregnancy. I didn't even go to my older brothers. And I didn't have the strength, the courage to talk to my parents about it, because I felt there were, like, at the time, I felt there were things I couldn't help them with. Okay.
Yeah, and you were honoring her request, right? She didn't want anybody else to know about it. I just want to mention here, because birth control comes up quite often when we're talking about a past abortion, and you know, what we did back then is not who we are today. And so support after abortion does not condone the use of birth control, nor would we ever tell somebody where to go get it. So I just want to make that out there for people that are watching. Dr. Joseph, I don't know. So I just wanted to,
That's a good point. And at the point, to tell you the truth, at the time I considered myself pro-life, and I wasn't even stopping to think about whether or not birth control was a moral thing for us to do. I mean, let's put this in perspective. This was about 1985. Mm-hmm. So we're talking 35 years ago. My son, the baby that was aborted, I've named him Paul, okay, would be about 35 years old right now. And so we stayed in relationship another couple of years. And I think it's, to sort of flesh out the story a little bit more, I talked about feeling like a little bit like an imposter or like I was hostage. I couldn't figure out what was slowing me down, tearing me up. And, in retrospect, I was looking for lots of outlets to try to fill the void. I mean, I volunteered for Special Olympics. I became a docent at the zoo. I became active in, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I was a big brother, okay? I volunteered at church, multiple different ministries. I became a godfather to 2 or 3 people who were going to have children. And we in the Catholic Church, if you're an adult and you want to get the sacraments, they're like godchildren too, okay? Because if they haven't done that, so I have adult godchildren, okay? And I really didn't put it together. And in retrospect, I think it was one part of the reason it took me a long time to finish my dissertation.
Listen, this is so good. I just got to tell you, Joseph, this is so good. You are like one of these outliers. Most of us that have felt hostage to an abortion, either felt coerced or felt like you were pulled along, like you're explaining, would take a completely different road. Like for me, I coped with it in really unhealthy ways. You did some really healthy things after that. So, I mean, again, I'm proud of you.
It's like I said, everybody has a different approach to how they deal with grief. And, I stumbled in different ways too. Okay. I could tell you that, I'm a pretty bright guy. I mean, I went to school for a long time. It's a big part of who I am. Okay. And it was an odyssey. I followed my curiosity and I don't regret it, but I stopped thinking right. I stopped being able to, use all of my deductive powers, call into quick connection, different areas of knowledge, okay? And, when you're working on a dissertation and you have to, publish papers and meet deadlines and go to presentations and so forth, it takes a lot out of you when you can't do all those things. Working deep into the night, you just don't make the connection. So I finished my doctoral degree. That ends up coming up later on in the story when I reconnect with the aborted mother. I reconnected with her in 2012 after my Rachel's Vineyard retreat, right before Father's Day.
Let's hear about that. Let's hear about the healing part, the good stuff, right?
All right. So, Facebook is the great connector. And I had connected with an old friend of the two of us. I hadn't talked to her at all since '85. And along comes 2012. I'm kind of in a crisis because I'm preparing these talks for my own suffering in silence, the stigma of abortion and how it affects men, a talk that I have available on YouTube. And Father's Day is coming along, and Father's Day, for some reason, I didn't connect the dots. It's always been a crisis for me. I wanted to be one of those guys who, when the pastor said, okay, all the fathers stand up so people could recognize them, I wanted to stand up. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was ashamed. Okay. And I don't know which came first, Father's Day or connecting with Jackie. But I stood up one Father's Day in 2012, and it was, that was a trigger. I felt like everybody was looking at me, okay? Now, so I made friends with a mutual friend of ours. She found me, she looked me up on LinkedIn, and we had a little chat going in Facebook that sometimes I think is worthy of sharing. It comes down to, she wanted to know whether or not I finished my doctoral degree. And I told her I had, and she congratulated me. And then, I went on to say, I went to medical school. I did 3 fellowships, and I wasn't bragging. I just wanted to tell her I went beyond that. And then I think over the course of, it could have been a couple of days or a couple of weeks, I brought myself to ask her if we could talk, because I had some, latent issues that I'd like to just speak with her about. And I think what I wanted is what many people want. I wanted to feel forgiven, because I was having problems forgiving myself.
Yeah.
And I wanted an opportunity to forgive her if that's what she wanted.
Yeah.
So I asked, and I was surprised and very happy to find out that she agreed to having a conversation with me. We set up a day and a time, and so the time comes along, I pick up the phone, nobody answers. Then I go over to the Facebook chat window, and there is this explanation about why she can't talk, and how it's been a long day and a long week and a long year. And then she told me that it was basically her decision. I shouldn't feel bad about it. And she wanted, I think in retrospect, she wanted to know that it was okay with me that she told her that. And it wasn't, because I felt, let down again, like there wasn't anything I could do about it. Now, nothing's happened since then. I mean, I don't want to do any harm. Everybody's at a different point in how they relate to all this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, if I could just interrupt just for a second, because I do want to get to the healing through Project Rachel, but you brought up a couple of things just now. One was, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. It will come back to me.
sure.
But the other thing that I wanted to mention is that you had done some videos and talked about your abortion experience before all of this happened, right? Wasn't it like in 2000?
This was happening right at that time. I was about to start talking. I think I may have given a couple of talks. To tell you the truth, it's 8 years ago. I don't remember exactly what came first, the conversation, Father's Day, or the talks. I remember when I got to that first talk, the one that's on on YouTube, I didn't know if I was going to give the talk up until the time the microphone was on my ear and somebody said, "Here's Joe." Okay.
And we're going to put those links to those talks in the Facebook stream so that you can click on them and watch them at a time that's convenient for you. And I remembered what I was going to say, Joe, as I spent decades not knowing why I hated Mother's Day so much. Yeah. And it was because they would do the same thing. Everybody that's a mother stand up. And I would say, like, well, I didn't even recognize that I was a mother then, but I used to get angry because what about all those women sitting out in the audience or in the congregation that are infertile or never had kids and wanted kids, and I used to get angry about it. And so, what I'm seeing here is similarities in between the way that men and women do grieve.
We're more alike than we are different.
Great saying.
And we don't realize it. And, people don't talk about abortion. They're uncomfortable talking about abortion. They can't understand how men and women could actually be on the same side on the subject. But when it comes to healing is the great equalizer. Mm-hmm. You're going to feel better once you know other people feel like you do. And it's a completely even more enriching experience in the case of abortion when men experience something intimate about how women are healing from abortion and vice versa.
So let's hear about Rachel's Vineyard. When you wanted to volunteer somewhere, they said you had to go through healing. I'm
going to say her name because she's my mentor forever. Okay, there was a Project Rachel director in our local diocese. Her name is Emma Bowe, and she had my number. Okay, so I'm calling her in November of 2011. Okay, now I'm going to back up a second here because it's very relevant. Okay, my relationship with Jackie, Paul's mother, lasted about 5 years, and I've had problems in relationships ever since. in 2011, I broke up in a relationship that lasted 12 years. And to put it in perspective, the relationship, one of the things that I thought glued our relationship together, and I will get to the healing, was that she was in adoption and I was feeling like if I somehow helped ennoble and empower this in her, it would be redemptive for me, okay? But in September of 2011, we broke up abruptly, okay? In November of 2011, I'm trying to volunteer to become a Project Rachel member of the healing team for Project Rachel. I meet Emma Bowe, and she kindly thought it would be a good idea for me to go on the weekend. And after I go on the weekend, then I could volunteer. And I resisted that. She threw scholarships at me and tried to hold a spot open. And I ended up coming in sort of like by the skin of my nose in February. The week after, I tried to reconcile with my former fiance, who was now in relationship with someone else. And it was a completely transformative experience. For people who don't know what the the Rachel's Vineyard Weekend is, it's a boot camp. I mean, it's a weekend, a Friday night, all day Saturday, a Sunday morning, where you get a scrubbing. And we're sharing with one another. And what was unique for me, and I think for several of the people who were there were about 12 of us. I was the only man. And then there's a team. There's about 5 people on the team. And of note, the only other men in the room would have been a social worker, whose name is Ed, I remember him well, and then a priest who's there some of the time, not some of there because, they have other responsibilities. But I was the only post-abortive man in the room. In the beginning, I felt like all eyes were on me. It's sort of like when you walk into a room, you don't feel like some people are being friendly to you, okay? And I didn't really know what to make of everyone else. And somewhere early in the experience, I started saying to myself something that stayed with me ever since: where are all the men? I mean, if every abortion involves a man and a woman, then, there ought to be more than one. And that carried through the weekend with me. I had conversations with the social worker, the priest, Emma, and the weekend culminates in something called, there's a ceremony where we grieve the loss of our aborted child. There is a certificate of life that is signed by a priest. It's not a birth certificate, it's not a legal document, but it's the Catholic Church basically saying, here's a soul, we recognize it as a soul. I named my son and I signed it and a priest signed it, okay? And I can share that with folks as well. And I felt transformed. They tell you at these weekends, try not to go to work the next day because you're gonna have some re-entry issues that you might be glad you took the day off. And it wasn't one day, it was a week, okay? It's the result of scrubbing your conscience. And what I didn't know then that I've now come to really believe is it's really just sort of like jump-starting your lifelong journey. Because if it's successful, then you feel empowered and you want to share that.
Yeah, Joseph, that's so great. First of all, I just acknowledge you for being in a room full of women, sharing and being so transparent, because you have to really be authentic and transparent, right, in order to be able to move through that grief and loss process. And I think in an earlier conversation that we had, you mentioned that after a while, the women were really having your perspective really help those women to understand what men go through in that abortion decision process and vice versa. I do need to make a correction. Your videos are going to be posted during our conference, not on the Facebook link during this live event. And so thank you for that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely wonderful that you were that brave.
So, hindsight's 2020. Actually, it's more like, 2040, but what I didn't know then that I've come to understand better, and I'm by no means done figuring it out, okay, is that I couldn't be honest in relationships. I mean, that imposter thing, I called it being a hostage versus when sometimes I felt like, well, the only other people who are going to understand me are the people who've gone through what I've gone through. It's like, veterans in battle with PTSD. Okay. Well, sometimes it's the same when I talk to a woman, but sometimes I just want to talk to a man about the experience. And it's hard to find men who want to talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
I didn't know how. I've come to understand that women are not the enemy. They want to help. I want to help them. They want to help me. And it's made me a better person because now I feel more honest. I feel like I'm be more intimate. I mean, in all my relationships, with my parents, with my priest, with you. I mean, we're compadres, and we want to find where's this going to take us? How can we find synergies that other people might feel, inspired by? Okay. If that happens, then wow.
Well, and so that brings us to your real passion, right?
Yeah.
Getting men that have been impacted by abortion in front of somebody that can take them through that healing process. So I want to talk just a little bit about the Foundations of Life that you volunteer for. I know that there's a couple of different programs, but there's one really unique thing that you do. I had never heard of it before. I want the pregnancy center people that are watching out there to hear what you do at one of the pregnancy centers under Foundations of Life.
All right, so there are lots of folks at Foundation of Life, just because, the staff are basically all women, they tend to be all women, okay, who support me and love me and, want me to make a contribution. And so the idea came along, since I'm a radiologist and I read, among other things, pregnancy ultrasounds. Why not get involved in the pregnancy centers and go into the ultrasound rooms, either as a member of a team with a female ultrasound tech, or at some point I could do them by myself, okay? Which is not something I do every day, but it's certainly something I could do. The point is it's led in ways nobody really expected, least of all me, okay? I want you to imagine, someone who's pregnant, a woman who's pregnant, who's going in for an ultrasound. Maybe it's your first ultrasound. Maybe it's an early ultrasound. She knows she's pregnant. She doesn't know. Some of them don't know if they want to keep the pregnancy. Sometimes they bring their mother. Oftentimes they'll bring the father. And that moment when the ultrasound pops up on the screen and you're looking at the ultrasound, things start to get real. And bonding takes place, whether you can understand how a man responds, versus how a woman responds. There's a connection. Sometimes it's not really concordant. Sometimes there's some discord, how come you're not watching? Okay. Other times it's, oh, wow. And they pull out the cameras and they're really in tune with the event. What I can tell you is that as a man in the room, who knows something about pregnancy and knows something about what the findings of the ultrasound show, I think there's a lot of beautiful energy that moves between us because the fathers have another father in the room, and I can help reinforce that. I don't want to lead their mutual experience by any means. I try to stand on the side, but oftentimes it gives me perspective as a father who's still healing after abortion.
Yeah.
What it's like to be in that situation. And, at the bottom, what I've come to believe is that I want what every father wants. I want a relationship with my son. I want to feel like it's a real relationship, one that I can be proud of, and that my son can be proud of me, that we love each other in some sort of a tangible way. And so this is actually sort of a cathartic experience for me as well. And it becomes mutual. Okay.
Yeah.
Short-lived, it may only last 10, 15 minutes, right? But it's unique, and I've never heard of anybody doing it, and I don't know where it's going to go.
Well, and
Tomorrow
that's
we
really
have
why,
3 ultrasounds.
and that's really why I wanted to bring it up, because I had never heard of it either. But what a tremendous segue to have a man be in the ultrasound room and then to be able to mentor that dad through that pregnancy, right? Because dads, young dads, or like almost dads, need to learn how to be a parent as well. And you just touched on that. I want to get to a couple of comments, and if you have any questions for Joseph, please post them on Facebook, and we'll try to get to them and answer them. I just want you to hear what some people are saying about you. They said, God bless you for sharing your experience with Rachel's Vineyard. We need more men to come forth and get this healing. Yes, men need healing. Let me see, I'm trying to get this to move up so I can see it. And then someone says, and you'll have to look at the Facebook feed afterwards, Joseph, I would love to connect you with a couple men that have similar stories and are stepping into helping others now. So I really want to move on to, how you found support after abortion. You attended our last conference. You're going to be a presenter in our October conference,
Right.
But we have just connected you with Father Sean, and we're hoping that you're going to be instrumental in helping us to develop a thriving men's program going into 2021. Would you like to share what that vision looks like for you?
Yeah, I'll start by telling you how I connected with support after abortion. I got an email from our one of the leaders in Catholic Charities in the Diocese of St. Petersburg, basically telling me about this conference. And what caught my attention is she emailed it just to me and not like some big, email group. And I went to the link and I looked at it and it seemed compelling. And after all, it was free and you could, spend some time learning about this. And I signed in and I showed up for some of the live sessions and I was hooked. I didn't realize at the time, in some ways it reactivated my passion. Okay. The whole idea of building a tent where many different approaches to healing after abortion can collect, put something in, take something out. It could be training, it could be connections. I'd love to see some research come out of this, something, directed towards men. How do we better understand different approaches that could work for men? Okay. Not because men are different, because we're more alike than we are different, but because I have this hunch that, if men start moving down the path of healing, it will inspire women and we'll find the synergies that come from that we aren't really taking advantage of right now. Okay. So I think it's a paradigm change. I think it's a game changer. I found myself wanting to know more about certain things. And as is my habit, like when I'm collaborating on academic pursuits, I'll start asking questions and I'll start throwing out ideas and I'll start sharing articles. Have you read this? Okay. And then the dialogue goes both ways. And there's a major thrust on the part of support after abortion to look at non-faith-based healing as a means of addressing a large demographic. And my initial reservations came over, I got over my initial reservations because I prayed about it, okay? Let God, and I found myself saying, I'm going to let go and let God. And how can I do that?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Well, we have some questions and I want to be able to get to them. There's two questions that are kind of similar. One says, why do you think men don't reach out for help? And what can we do to change that? And the other one is just the same kind of basic question. What's a good way to reach out to the men in our community that have suffered an abortion experience? Do you have some thoughts on that?
I do. And that's really the tie-in to support after abortion. I'm looking for different ways of getting attention, not only from men, but from women, just to get them to the point where they're starting to wonder, why can't I connect the dots? Okay. I'm a bright guy. I mean, I love reading, and I follow my curiosity, and I couldn't put it together. I mean, I'm an analytical guy. I rely more on my thinking and rational thought than I do on my feelings. I lean on it. So I think, I mean, it's going to sound a little bit like a cop out. I think we need women to help us so that we can take the first step. And in my case, it was Emma Bowe.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't give up on me. Okay. I didn't reach out to a man after that and say, well, what do you think? Okay. I think other men who hear some of my message now in particular are going to hear some more authenticity. Okay. But they're not coming to my talks, and they're not, logging in, and they're not doing some of the things I think women do more of. And they may not be connecting with their feelings the way, this sounds sexist, but they don't have the emotional quotient, and they got to get over that.
We're changing that, though, because you are going to be a presenter at our next conference. And I know that you and Lisa are having a conversation. Could you tell those that are watching what you're going to be talking about during our virtual conference from October 28th through 30th?
Generally we're speaking about men and abortion. And, I have an academic background. I'm an engineer. I'm a physician. I'm a physicist. I'm a radiologist. And I'm really trying to make myself transparent. I kind of feel like, that movie with Robin Williams and Bob De Niro, Awakening? The Awakening. Yeah. It's a beautiful movie. It's a story about these, Robin Williams plays a doctor. I love all the movies where Robin Williams plays a doctor, because he's kooky and he's a screwball, and he helps us connect with our feelings. Okay. In that movie, Robert De Niro plays a man who's got like profound Parkinsonism. He can't even communicate with other people until he gets the new drug. And what I'm getting at in a long way is saying, I want to open myself up, look inside, dump it out. If you find something you can use it. Okay. I'm a screwball doctor sometimes as well, but I'd love to be able to work with groups of people who say, yes, this is a way that we can connect. This is something we haven't thought of before. Here are things that bring us together. Here are things where the differences are opportunities to heal. Okay. So what I think Lisa and I will be talking about is men and abortion in sort of a global sense. We have feelings, we have hormones. I think we use anger more than we do sadness. Okay. Crying and whatever the emotional release of crying doesn't come naturally to me. Okay. I mean, I have to feel moved, but I find the more authentic I get, the easier it is for me to be moved.
Yeah. That's really good, because anger does cover up hurt and grief and emotions a lot. Anger is definitely a secondary kind of emotion that's covering up the real root of what's going on. We have another question that I'm going to go ahead and answer. Somebody asked, how does forgiveness work with a non-faith-based abortion healing program? And what we believe as Support After Abortion is that you have to meet the person where they are. If they're not a person of faith, to lead with God is just going to shut them down. So what we do is we're a faith-based organization. We are genuinely and authentically who we are. We ask permission to be ourselves so that we can serve them best. And so Janine Marone, the president of our board, says we have to walk through their door in order to bring them back through our door. So right. We meet them where they are. And so like the final words, I would love for you to talk to the men that are potentially watching, or the men whose wives might go to them and say, hey, I watched this and this guy was on talking about his abortion experience. What kind of message would you like to leave with those people that are watching before we close our show today?
I think I'm going to speak for myself about myself. I think I was one of those people who went through an abortion really oblivious to what it meant to me. Um, I didn't know what the consequences of being party to that were. And I was, in some ways, I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, I didn't drive her, I didn't pay for it. I've got lots of excuses, but I still felt a crisis of conscience, and I couldn't make it go away. So if you feel something like that, if there's something that doesn't seem to be working, if relationships have, sort of like thresholds beyond which you can't get past, no matter how hard you try, then maybe there's something related to an abortion experience that deserves attention. I can tell you, along the way, I had several counselors. I had a counselor in graduate school. I remember him well. 12 visits and then you're done. It's time to fly. Abortion never came up, not once. I had, a counselor I've had men counselors, women counselors. I probably had a half a dozen. I have a good one now. Okay. and he's, he's a Christian counselor. He's not afraid of including his faith in what he says. Okay. We happen to share the same faith. The point is, once you feel like there may be more you are not connecting, that it is a potential wellspring. I mean, that's the low-lying fruit. Okay. There are lots of ways to connect with methods of getting support after abortion. Rachel's Vineyard, in my view, I haven't gone through as many as you, Karen, not yet. Okay. Is a pretty comprehensive way. I mean, you put in a lot of time, they put a lot of time and thought and effort into it, and you're going to get, your time will be well spent at a Rachel's Vineyard retreat. Okay. For women, I'm going to say you're more like us, like men, than you're not like men. And for women who are supporting men, say you're in a mixed or blended relationship, you didn't have an abortion, but he had an abortion in his past, and there's some things that aren't quite working, or he's not connecting well. I'll talk a little bit about it at the virtual conference. I mean, there are behaviors to watch for.
Yeah.
Pornography is a red flag, because it is a way to objectify a relationship without investing in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't want you to give too much away, because we want people to come and see you. I believe that your time is on the 29th at 3 p.m. That's Thursday at 3 p.m. If you want to see Joseph's live presentation on our virtual conference. I just want to piggyback on what Joseph's saying. If you have had an abortion, man or woman or a family member who maybe, your daughter had an abortion and you really wanted her to parent that child. If you're struggling with the impacts of abortion, we want you to pick up the phone and reach out. If you're a man, we'll connect you. We have male mentors that have been where you are. If you're a family member, we have organizations that we can connect you to that understand the ripple effect of abortion, because it's not just the woman that's impacted, it's everyone around her. And if you're a woman that's never reached out for help, pick up the phone. We have people waiting right now that will answer your call and connect you to the healing, not only that you want, but that you so desperately deserve. Don't struggle like I did for decades. I wasted most of my life not sharing the pain that I have. Thank God that I've been redeemed and I can now sit in this chair and put purpose to my pain and help other people. And so we're about at the end of our show today. I just want to let you know that next week I'm not going to be here. Lisa Rowe, the CEO of Support After Abortion, is going to take my seat, and she's going to be interviewing Mary McCluskey from Project Rachel.
Great.
So yes. So make sure that you tune in next Tuesday at 4 p.m. with Lisa and Mary McCluskey, Project Rachel. Thanks for watching the show. We love you, and we'll see you next week.